This is a soccer field. This is an American football field. And this is a Roman marching camp, built by a standard army within hours after an exhausting 18-mile march. Such camps played a key role in the success of the Roman imperial army, yet their precise description and layout was unfortunately lost to history. The only key to rediscovering them is within one mysterious and often forgotten source, De Munitionibus Castrorum, or Concerning the Fortifications of a Camp. This text was a proposal from an anonymous Roman military surveyor, likely to the emperor himself, vividly detailing a new optimized camp design, complete with precise dimensions, unit placements, and defensive fortifications. The only problem is it's a quite difficult read, riddled with gaps and errors, throwing off many historians who tried to reconstruct it in the past. But by standing on their shoulders, I believe today's model will get fairly close to how the original architect envisioned it, and it's the purpose of this video to present you this model, along with the incredible amount of thought and planning that made the Roman army so dominant. Our mysterious text outlines a camp for a surprisingly specific army, numbering around 40,000 soldiers. Here I've listed the units in order of increasing status. At the bottom of the hierarchy are 3,000 diverse mercenaries, recruited from across the Roman world, and marines, drafted from the imperial fleets at Misenum and Ravenna. Above them are Rome's professional soldiers, 6 auxiliary infantry cohorts, 3 of which are 480 strong and 3 800 strong, alongside 17 auxiliary cavalry units, also of varying sizes. Next up are the citizen soldiers, 2 centuries of guards, 200 scouts, 20 centuries of vexillari, detachments from other legions and evocati, or veterans, and 3 full-strength legions totaling over 15,000 men. Normally these legionaries would be the most prestigious soldiers in the army, but here they are not. Towering above them are 4 Praetorian cohorts, a Praetorian cavalry unit, and 450 equites singulares, the emperor's mounted bodyguard, drawn from the finest cavalry the empire has to offer. The presence of these 3 unit types indicates that this is the personal field army of the Roman emperor himself. Now, whether this was a real formation or a theoretical example, its composition already gives us a lot of insight. For one, it shows that foreign troops usually outnumbered Roman citizens, even in the army of the emperor. Secondly, the specific types of units and terminology are what historians use to tentatively date this document to somewhere in the 2nd century AD, though this still remains a subject of ongoing debate. Now let's examine how the author planned to house this colossal army, a feat of logistics and engineering in its own right. His instructions are precise. The camp must occupy a gentle plateau elevated above the plain to prevent flooding and command a clear view in all directions. It must also be situated near ample supplies of wood, forage, and water. He then turns to what must be avoided, which he rather amusingly refers to as noercae, or mothers-in-law. Unfavorable positions, which were called mothers-in-law by our ancestors, should be avoided at all times. The camp should not be overlooked by a mountain from which the enemy could attack or see what is going on in the camp. There should be no forests nearby to conceal a hidden enemy, nor gullies or valleys through which the enemy may secretly approach the camp. Nor should the camp be near a fast-flowing river, which might flood and overwhelm the camp in a sudden storm. Archaeology confirms the Romans largely followed these rules, with most excavated marching camps occupying the most strategically favorable ground available. When it comes to construction, the text dictates a rectangular camp with a strict 3:2 ratio. This was considered ideal, long enough to catch the wind for ventilation, but not so long that trumpet signals would be lost on the far ends. While archaeology reveals that real-world camps often deviated from this ratio, the 3:2 proportion does appear more common than any other. For his specific army, the author gives precise dimensions: 2,400 by 1,600 Roman feet for the main strigified area, which is where the tents were pitched. Surrounding this was a 60-foot wide buffer zone called intervallum, intended to protect the tents from missiles and provide space for troops to maneuver. However, 60 feet seems insufficient for either purpose, leading many historians to suspect a copying error in the manuscript. Beyond it lay the main fortifications, with a ditch at least 5 foot wide and 3 feet deep being recommended. It could be either V-shaped or Punic, which featured a sheer vertical drop on its outer side. Behind this, an earth rampart was to be 8 feet wide and 6 feet high, achieved by placing stakes into the ground. Once again, historians find these dimensions inadequate for a marching camp of this size. It's possible, however, that the author is describing a camp within friendly territory, as he later states that in safe regions, the fortifications could be nothing but a single ditch, maintained purely for the sake of discipline. The text then describes a clavicula, a curved rampart around the gates to funnel attackers, but its explanation is so vague that historians proposed several variations that fit: an external, internal, or combined protruding rampart. But the author provides a crucial clue when he later also adds a titulum, a separate defensive ditch 60 feet in front of the gate. This feature would physically interfere with an external clavicula, making the internal design the most likely candidate, and archaeology confirms this. Internal claviculae are far more commonly found. Yet evidence of them being used alongside a titulum is extremely rare, with only 2 known examples. But archaeology shows the late 1st century AD saw a period of intense experimentation for Roman gate defenses, with many varieties being found. So it's possible this author was pushing for a design that proved to be overkill in practice, and was therefore never adopted. With the fortifications complete, let's get to the fun part and break down the camp's internal layout. The first and most important building to be constructed was the Praetorium, the administrative headquarters, measuring a massive 160 by 720 feet. Right in front of it was where the army surveyors placed the first groma, their primary instrument, which they used to mark out the entire camp. The main roads divided the camp into 3 conveniently named sections: the Praetentura, the front, the Retentura, the rear, and the Latera Praetorii, the sides of the Praetorium. The front contained the 2 widest roads, the 60-foot Via Praetoria and Via Principalis, while the rear was divided by the 40-foot Via Quintana, and running the inner perimeter was a 30-foot Via Sagularis. Calculating space for the soldiers presents a difficult challenge, because depending on the unit and its status, each would have a different amount of officers, who each required larger quarters, as well as a different amount of animals, baggage, and arms. On top of this, each unit would have a number of men who would be on watch duty at all times, and so wouldn't need tent space. The text simplifies all of this by introducing the fundamental building block called hemistrigum, or half strip, measuring 30 by 12 feet, and by providing a single standardized measurement of space to be given to each soldier type that takes into account all extras and nuances. For instance, each legionary is nominally allotted 1.5 feet, such that 8 of them take up one entire half strip, which is meticulously allocated: 10 feet for their tent, 5 for arms, 9 for baggage, and 6 left open. These half strips were often paired into full strips, creating a 12-foot road in between for mobility. The 8 men housed in each block constituted a contubernium, the smallest subunit in the legion, with 10 of these forming a century of 80 men. However, the author states that with some men always on watch duty, only 8 tents needed to be pitched, with the centurion taking the extra space for himself. And there you have it. If you assume each legionary needed 1.5 feet of hemistriga, there's enough space for everything. On the other hand, though, this would imply that 16 men from each century, numbering nearly 8,000 from the whole army, stood guard at all times. Even if we assume an excessive 1,000 of them were needlessly crammed onto the palisade at just 8 feet apart, the remaining 7,000 still seems like an exceedingly high number for guard duty. Nevertheless, we must carry on with the author's logic to complete his model. 6 centuries formed a 480-man cohort, and 10 cohorts of course made a legion, though the elite first cohort was always larger, mustering 800 men. The author makes a key tactical decision by stationing the 3 full legions outside the main Via Sagularis road. He explains that as the army's most reliable troops, they must be entrusted with guarding the palisade and be the first to form a defense if attacked. The only exceptions are the large first cohorts, which guard their legion's precious eagle standards, and are therefore placed inside for protection, along with a single regular cohort for symmetry. When it was time to march, the first cohorts likely led their legions out through the nearest gates, which suggests the other cohorts were somehow camped in their numerical order. The author supports this by noting the rear gate was called Porta Decumana, or 10th gate, because the 10th cohorts were camped nearby. All regular cohorts were assigned to a plot of either 120 by 180, 360 by 60, or 240 by 90 feet, though they could be abnormally shaped if needed. While the text presents a clear theoretical alignment for the tents, its practical application is questionable. The guy ropes of the closely spaced tents would have no doubt interfered with one another, making passage between them difficult and restricting movements largely to the streets in front. But since these ran parallel to the perimeter, most legionaries in the middle would have had poor access to the ramparts during a sudden attack. The author also fails to address the awkward empty spaces that would be left between some of the cohorts. Moving to the rest of the army, the text begins its layout with the Praetentura, but gives dimensions for only half its area, implying a symmetrical layout. The first 60 feet is reserved for the 3 legates and their staff, which is also where centurions gathered to receive their orders. The following 60 is for the tribunes and their staff, while the next 300 is for 2 large, 768-strong ala cavalry units. Because ala were of a higher status than other auxiliary cavalry, they were always allotted more space. In this case, the equivalent for 1,000 horsemen, which was the standard for an ala miliaria. This is because their officers owned 96 spare horses between them, and their prefect took up much more space. With the symmetrical layout, this area would house all 4 of these units in the army. The remaining space is not at all described, but is noted to contain the Marines, protected by Pannonian and Mauritanian cavalry, along with the Scouts, a legionary cohort detachment, and 3 key buildings: a hospital, a veterinary clinic, and workshops with given dimensions. A final 60 feet is reserved for internal streets. The middle section shares the same dimensions but appears smaller due to the massive Praetorium, to which all tents in this area are parallel. The first 20 feet are dedicated to guard stations to protect the headquarters, followed by 60 feet for the comites, the emperor's aides and staff. Within the next 120 feet, the author places the Praetorians, who take up double the space because they use larger tents. Camped with them are the evocati, or re-enlisted veterans, and the 3 primi pilares, the lead centurions of the legions, who are interestingly not capped with their centuries in the first cohorts. Flanking the Praetorians are their cavalry, the Praetorian horse on the left, and the Equites Singulares on the right. The author stresses the importance of always maintaining symmetry among these elite units, probably to better defend the headquarters. The remaining space is vaguely allocated to more legionary detachments, and 512-strong ala cavalry units. Though not explicitly stated in the text, I calculated their space as if they had 650 men each, staying true to the same inflation ratio as their larger ala counterparts. The final section was shorter at 650 feet, and housed another key building, the Quaestorium. This name originated in the Republic when it held the Quaestor, the army's second in command, but by the imperial era it was repurposed to secure the army's captives, hostages, and plunder, a high-value building requiring strong protection. Consequently, the first 60 feet on either side were allocated to the guards who patrolled the guard stations around the Praetorium. Their centurions were set up directly behind the headquarters for optimal security. Next to them was a 480-strong cohort occupying 30 feet, and beyond them, the author notes the tents shifted orientation by 90 degrees. There, he placed the remaining auxiliary cohorts in 17 rows, holding 400 men each, though they don't take up all the space. Below them were finally the mercenaries and allied troops, which the text states should all be close together to hear orders in their native tongues, and should be surrounded on all sides by professional troops. He makes no mentions of any roads, so their locations here are speculative. But he does provide instructions for scaling the entire model, noting that for a 5-legion army, the 5th legion should be camped along the Via Quintana, the very origin of that road's name, which would itself be widened to 50 feet, with 2 new gates added at its ends. And if any units lost men, they were still allotted their full original plots, with their tents simply spaced further apart within the same area. This ensured the camp's layout remained constant, making it easy to later integrate new recruits without reorganizing the entire fort. And so, here you have it, a complete scale model of a Roman marching camp. 40,000 troops housed in the most efficient manner possible, according to our Roman surveyor. Of course, this blueprint is not without its flaws. The narrow intervallum, the minimalistic fortifications, and the glaring omission of space for the army's baggage train, which would have included at least 10,000 servants and pack animals for an army of this size. We can assign space for about 7,000 of them within the free space in the camp, but any more would need extra space. Nevertheless, these shortcomings shouldn't overshadow the text's profound value, as historians still consider it a reliable source for a Roman camp's core architecture, including its sections, layouts, street orientations, and troop placements. After all, this was more than just a temporary shelter. It was a fortress built in hours, a true symbol of Roman discipline and military genius, giving them the ability to impose order and security onto any landscape, night after night. The legacy of Rome wasn't just written in stone, it was stamped into the earth, from the Scottish Highlands to the deserts of Africa. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out others we have made. Each of our videos takes at least a month of research and animation to create, so if you want to support our channel, please consider signing up on Patreon and enjoy the dozens of old videos that I have already uploaded. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.